All right, today is the Cinco de Mayo, and I believe this is the day they shot Maximilian, the Emperor of Mexico. It's a good day. It's a good day. It was a good thing they did that. And This is Paul Glumaz, and this is being brought to you by General Welfare Presents. So we have quite a situation developing. There's an all-out effort in the media coming from both the left and the right, mostly from the right, but also from the left, that China is responsible for the coronavirus problem, that they didn't warn it enough, or it escaped from the lab, or there were flights out of China after Wuhan, or it's just a whole series of things. And one of the leading people in the lies has been caught. His name is Neil Ferguson, Professor Neil Ferguson of the Imperial College Physicians of United Kingdom, and he made claims that the Chinese let flights leave after they shut down Wuhan in order to infect Europe and North America, and he had to back down. Now, this is very important because there is this Pompeo, Esper, the intelligence community, the media. It's all about China, China's trying to get us. China wants to destroy us. China hates us. Tucker Carlson is literally claiming that, there's Chinese hiding under your bed, waiting to get you. It's totally irrational. Okay, totally crazy. But where is it coming from? It's coming from the British directly. And who? The first organization to start this whole campaign is the Henry Jackson Society in London, co-founded by Richard Dearlove. Who is Richard Dearlove? He's the former head of MI5, British intelligence. He is also the mentor and protector of Christopher Steele. And Christopher Steele is at the center of the whole interface between the U.S. intelligence services, the British intelligence services, and the attempted coup against the president. And they have this massive gaggle of reporters and journalists who are connected to the intelligence community, who leak everything. And they've been at war with Trump. And that's where it's coming from. And now the entire conservative blogosphere is that China did it. China owes us trillions of dollars. China's the enemy. China's trying to take over the world. And the purpose of this, and the reason it's being purchased, the reason it's being bought, is that our entire Congress and the elites of this country are in deep doo-doo. They damn near destroyed the United States through their outsourcing policy. They took an industrial power of the United States and crapped it out to make a personal profit. They were bought into this whole system, and they sent their plants overseas, some of them to China. But China didn't get trapped into a slave labor system. They actually developed. And now that China's moving with the Belt and Road, and this whole situation is the end of the empire. So essentially, but these people, whether they be Republican senators and congressmen, whether they be Democratic senators, they're all caught in this web, that they were participated in this whole destruction of the United States. And now that the bailout of the international banking system is going on and on and on, much bigger than 2008, Eventually, the American people are going to fully get it, and that's the end. That's the end of that system. That's the end of these people. And there's an election coming up, and that could be an impact on the election. So China is the new Russia. Same people. Now, our job is to connect the two. That is, our job is to get the full story out on who the people were that ran the Russia thing and who the people are that are running this China thing, and they're the same. And when you do that, you have the potential of getting the population to understand it's the same thing. Now, Trump is in deep doo-doo, and he didn't cause it. He's in deep doo-doo because the virus, the coronavirus, has forced him to shut down, lockdown. That has aggravated the financial crisis. People can't stay locked down forever. And at some point, he's going to have to launch a massive economic infrastructure program to get people back to work. Not just the people who are not working now, but the people who are not working, who were not in productive jobs, need to shift into productive jobs. If he could get something like that going before the election, using the power of the Defense Production Act, using the power of the federal of the government being able to do that, as they are directing money to the population, as they are directing money to bail out the banks, if they could do it, then he has a chance of winning this election. What's further complicating things is this opening up process. If it opens up and you get hit with more cases, then that's your mistake. If you don't open up, it's your mistake. He's being caught in this. And also it's being made difficult because his primary form of staying in power has been to go out and to the population, to have these rallies, to have 50,000 people, to have 20,000 people inside and 30,000 people outside. That's been the way he has been able, through the Twitter and through the campaign. He's going into the campaign season, and we got the virus. We got the virus situation. He can't really justify having a mass rally right now. So these are all the variables that are vectoring into the financial collapse, are vectoring into the election, which is 6 months away, exactly 6 months away. And we can say that 6 months is not long, but this is going to be a long, painful, I wouldn't say necessarily, I would say roller coaster 6 months. This is going to be a real roller coaster of 6 months. And no one can tell you how it's going to end up. There are going to be twists and turns, and the British are all out. Now, the problem you have, and I'll explain, the problem you have in the United States is that the financial system is really now the British Empire. It's not it's not America. It's run internationally. It's part of the British Empire. Our military industrial complex is really not doing their military operations to defend the United States. They're doing their military operations to expand the British Empire. And the crime of General Michael Flynn is he exposed the fact that the CIA and the contractors were behind the terrorists. So our military, for the most part, all of the intelligence agencies are extensions of the British Empire. They've merged into the British Empire. They are the British Empire. Their allegiance is to the British Empire. Their allegiance is to this global order. The State Department has always been an allegiance to the British Empire. Kissinger admitted that back in the 70s. The Justice Department has been there to make sure that no leadership emerges in the United States like Lyndon LaRouche or Kennedy or King or anybody else gets in the way. Anybody else gets in the way, they get assassinated or they get framed up or they get blackmailed. They're there to make sure that genuine leaders do not emerge in the United States. That's why. That's what the Justice Department's there for. It's not there to stop the criminals. Local law enforcement do their best to try to stop the criminals, but they get interfered with all the time by the FBI to prevent them from being able to go higher than the local, local drug dealers or the local whatever. Yeah. So, and of course, that protects the drug cartels, which where the money goes into the empire. That's the empire activity. It's been an empire activity from the very beginning. So that's what. So our Justice Department, the FBI, is part of the empire. They're part of the criminal enterprise of the British Empire. Our financial system is part of the criminal enterprise of and most of all, the media. The whole media was reorganized during the Obama administration to be run as a psychological warfare operation under the instructions, under the plan of Cass Sunstein, who was worked with Obama. They set it up to run the media as a psychological warfare operation. It's not news. There's no news there. It's psychological warfare. Against who? Against the American population, against the U.S. citizenry. That's what it is. That's all it is. There is nothing there. There's entertainment, there's sports, but the media is psychological warfare. And you have Google and all these other places. They're now doing, blocking and shadowing and doing all this stuff. And then on top of that, you have NATO, under NATO, and the British have these brigades of disruptors going around disrupting blogs and being what they call shrill. I forgot the name of it. Anyhow, so to cause the maximum cognitive dissonance. So they're trying to cause the maximum cognitive dissonance in the population. Everyone at the highest levels of the empire know, as per the Lord's report put out, saying that the empire will not survive a second Trump administration, or what they call the rules-based order. That's the empire. And the reason they're saying that is because there's these kind of anti-imperial tendencies going on all over the world. In Italy, in Europe, in Africa, in Asia. And you have, China going directly against the empire with its Belt and Road, and Russia too. And Latin America, you have potential there. You have the new government in Argentina. And so they know, and with the financial collapse, they know it's going to be over unless they can prevent anything from coming into being. And what they want to prevent is what LaRouche has been putting forward, which is a new financial architecture that would allow for nations to have credit that is sovereign internally, and it would allow them to go into have a connection between the creation of money and the physical economy. There is no such connection right now. There is no connection between creating wealth and issuing debt and issuing money. There is no connection right now. That's been lost since the dollar was taken off the gold reserve system. And you had the floating exchange system established in 1973. So now this is their last chance to disrupt any possibility of the United States working with China. And what was Trump doing? He was working with China on a trade deal. There was no such thing. Trump doesn't blame China for the loss of U.S. jobs. He blames the corporations. He blames the empire. He doesn't call it that, but that's what it is. The corporations are the empire. So Americans are living in an empire, the British Empire. They're surrounded by the British Empire, and their congressmen are owned by the British Empire. So they're rebelling against the British Empire. That's what the Trump election was. Trump was a rebellion. Whether fully understood or not, it's a rebellion against the empire. So Trump is the insurgency that the empire must crush. And that insurgency is connected to the population. No Democrat can get no Democratic candidate can get a large audience. They're going to have to pay people to come. That's how they do it. They have to pay people to come And Trump can draw a crowd of 50,000, 25,000, 50,000. That's the big difference, right? That's the big difference. So, so that's what we're going into. That's the circumstance that we're going into. And the global situation is absolutely amazing. And the confusion around the virus is absolutely amazing, because we don't know if it's going to come back. We don't know if it's going to get worse. We don't know if it's going to get better. We don't know if it's seasonal. We don't know if someone, if some nefarious British operative operation to create a biowarfare. We don't know. It's not the Chinese, definitely. So what the hell is going on, right? It's not clear. There's so much confusion around this. And Trump cannot politically keep the lockdown going forever. And today he was in Arizona, and he spoke at an opening up situation in Arizona. But the point is, he can't politically do that. But if he opens up and the cases spread, then so this is where we are. This is the reality. Now, there is something that the virus has exposed. And this is very important. And I need to go into this from an economic standpoint. Up until the 70s, when the US dollar was connected to the real economy, you reached the kind of end of the economic development that went from FDR's administration with the conservation CCC and the TVA and the buildup that occurred prior to the war, and then the transformation of the economy during the war in terms of production. That economy should have been kept going, and had intended to turn that economy into an engine of production, of capital goods, and to build the infrastructure all over the world, to help rebuild Russia, the Soviet Union, to help rebuild China. That was his intention. And he made that very clear to Winston Churchill, who was no friend of his. And however, he passed away. The British were able to delay the war. They were able to use the FBI to run operations to prevent Henry Jackson from staying in as vice president. Truman ended up being president, and Churchill took over the policy of the United States. So the British took over the policy of the United States. But nonetheless, the Bretton Woods, which had been established by FDR, had the system of fixed exchanges, the gold reserve system of fixed exchanges, was intended to eliminate the empire. It was an anti-imperial policy. The International Monetary Fund that was created out of the Bretton Woods and the World Trade and the World Bank were intended to assist the development of formerly colonial or impoverished nations. And that didn't. They got taken over right away. But the Bretton Woods system remained intact until it started to collapse. Until the British started to massively run illegal operations against the Bretton Woods system. The Bretton Woods system also had a system of capital controls, and they started to evade all those capital controls in the offshore jurisdiction. So it was the British who criminally, through the City of London, broke the Bretton Woods system, ultimately forcing the crisis where the dollar should have been devalued with respect to gold, and the fixed exchange system sort of remained. Instead, they got rid of the whole fixed exchange system and turned it into the floating exchange system, which is the dollar, which was the beginning. And Neil LaRouche made this very clear in 1971. This is the beginning of the trajectory away from an industrial-based economy to a financial speculative-based economy. And what you saw was a shift of the workforce, increasingly from productive jobs to service jobs, and increasingly farming the productive jobs out gradually to other nations, And what this did was it lowered the actual physical economic power of the United States, but it did not really develop the physical economic power of those countries because they got to work in these sweatshops, but they weren't able to have infrastructure. So they kept the wages low. If you're going to have infrastructure, you got to raise the wages. The whole idea of infrastructure is that it costs, and you have to increase the wages of the population if you're going to develop a country. You can't develop without increasing wages. If you keep the wages very low at subsistence level, you're not going to develop any country. But to the degree that they could, they replaced the jobs in those forms. So you started to actually destroy the world economy. You started to destroy the productive power of the world economy. And eventually this led to the just-in-time supply chain. And eventually this led to the situation where no nation was self-sufficient in those key areas such as food and other areas. So you ended up with this globalized system, which was administered by these multilateral agencies and not connected to any country. And then the European Union, which is on top of that, was created, which is the same thing on a European level, so that the nations of Europe lost their sovereignty, and now they're under the direction of a European bureaucracy and a set of rules that castrates them economically, and they're under a central bank, European Central Bank, which they have no control over. So, those people gave up their sovereignty. Well, they might regain it if the European Union falls apart, which it pretty well will under these circumstances. So this is where we are. And China and Russia got out from under this control. Russia almost didn't get out of this control, and China almost didn't get out of this control. But the ascendancy of Xi Jinping and his faction in the Chinese Communist Party meant that they were committed to the full development of China, to the most advanced level. And this is to end, from the Chinese standpoint, the 200 years of humiliation they feel that they've been under from the West. So this is not an imperial issue. It's an imperial of a civilizational pride, that they as Chinese have finally reached the point where they have overcome the backwardness and the subservience that they've been under since the Opium Wars, since the 1800s. So this is where they're coming from. So that's where we are. And so going back to the lockdown, we discover in the lockdown that we have a very relatively shallow industrial economy, which Trump has been trying to build up in this period. He's been trying to get companies to come back. He was trying to get the physical economy going. He did not sign on to the Paris Accord on climate. He did not do that because of this, because he wants a physical economy. He wants an industrial-based economy. That's what he promised in the election. The Green New Deal is the opposite. This evil film, Planet of the Humans, a really cynical, evil film, exposes, however, the fraud of the whole solar, wind, and all this other stuff. But its proposal is cut back, die. That's the best you can do. But nonetheless, Michael Moore's film does expose it. So we're now at the point where Trump has to get if he's going to come out of the lockdown, he has to come out with the infrastructure program. But what we discover is that a large portion of our population has been increasingly living in what the term is gig jobs. Okay, driving Uber, delivery, restaurant work, entertainment, drug dealing. Now it's more legal. At least at the pot level, it's more legal. The informal economy. So you have a large portion of the population involved in these jobs. And these are non-productive jobs. They're part of the service economy, but it's gotten worse. In developing countries, like you take a lot of these countries in Africa as an example, there's no infrastructure connecting the cities to the interior sufficient for the agriculture to properly provide for those cities. And the agriculture, and also there's a lack of electricity. In Ghana, the average age of the farmer is 50 years old. What happened to all the young people? When Africa has a 19.7 year average, what happened? Where's all the young people? Well, they're not going into farming. They're going into the cities. And so you have these vast slums of people surviving, and on the street selling or day labor or whatever. You have this in Mexico. You have this everywhere else. Take Singapore or Saudi Arabia or all these countries. What do? They bring in all these Bangladesh people from Pakistan, from India, as slaves, literally as slaves. They make them work as slaves. That's the system. So this is what we're looking at. We're looking at the virus, the lockdown and the whole crisis of the virus is exposing the truth of all of this. And the only way out is a drive for a massive productive infrastructure building on an internal scale, on a global scale, and that's the only way out. And that's what that's the direction Trump has to go. That's the direction the Chinese and the Russians are going to go in. That's the direction most of Asia is going to go in. But that's where the U.S. has to go. It has to do that. So those two things. Trump has to somehow manage this COVID-19 crisis. At the same time, he has to prepare for a massive infrastructure program. I don't see any other way for him to survive this situation and for us to survive this situation. Because he is the insurrection. He is the insurrection, and we are part of the insurrection. Okay.